When he was a young man, he lived in a very, very privileged position. He lived 2,500 years ago, and he basically could have anything that the culture of that time could give him. He was at his disposal. But he saw that in life there was birth, aging, sickness, and death, and he couldn't satisfy himself with all these pleasurable things, knowing that one day he'd be subject to those truths. Hello. So this week we're going to be talking about the nature of existence. So last week we talked about conditionality as a realization that the Buddha had during his Enlightenment experience. So he realized that everything comes about. Every phenomenal thing that we can become aware of comes about due to conditions, and when those conditions stop, those things cease to be. And that's quite sort of revolutionary when you think that that means that nothing can spontaneously arise or disappear, and that everything is actually connected. Everything in the universe is in some way connected to everything else. That's sort of fairly radical. But also we spoke about one of the aspects of conditionality, which is karma. And you've probably heard the term before, but karma means action. And we spoke about how if we take actions which are motivated by love, wisdom, generosity, positive emotions basically, then that will have a consequence of positive feedback to ourselves and other people at some point in the future. And the opposite's true. If we act out of greed, hatred and delusion, then similarly at some future date we'll suffer because of that. So that's a conditionality around karma. So and they're very fundamental teachings, very important teachings of the Buddha. And we looked at those in respect, sort of pictorially, we looked at what's called the Wheel of Life. But this week we're going to look at another important aspect of the Buddha's teaching, and that's he was looking at the views we tend to hold as human beings, and he identified 4 views which we typically hold, which don't help us in our spiritual progress. They're called the Viparyashas, but I'm not going to ask you to remember that. An easier thing to remember is they're called the upside-down views, or the topsy-turvy views, which is a bit more sort of user-friendly, isn't it? And so we'll go through those. We'll go through those views that he said were unhelpful to our spiritual progress, but which we all tend to hold. And the first one he spoke about was seeing unpleasant things as pleasant. So we mistake unpleasant things for pleasant things. And perhaps a really good example of that was the Buddha himself. I don't know how much you know about the Buddha, but basically when he was a young man, he lived in a very, very privileged position. He lived 2,500 years ago, and he basically could have anything that the culture of that time could give him. He was at his disposal. But he saw that in life there was birth, aging, sickness and death. And he couldn't satisfy himself with all these pleasurable things, knowing that one day he'd be subject to those truths which he saw. And typically, there's a number of formulations of this, but there's those 4 aspects of things which actually we find as difficult to live with. But also there are 3 other things which he pointed out to us. Which one is that we quite often want things which we're not able to get, and that makes us unhappy. We quite often actually have to have things which we don't want. So, it's the things, obviously possessions, relationships, status, these are things that we perhaps want and maybe can't achieve. That makes us unhappy, unsatisfactory for us. But also we might find that actually we have to deal with this person that we find difficult. We can't get the relationship we want. we don't have the possessions that we want to have. Those things are, they're difficult as well. And lastly, seventh, if you like, the seventh list in the list of things which we find difficult is we may have what we think we want. We may get the possessions, the relationships, etc. that we've sort of hankered after, but when we get them, we feel that they're not really ours. That we feel that perhaps if we have possessions, that we don't really deserve them. That are other people who want them. We might feel guilty about it. If they're relationships, we might find it that they're perhaps difficult to hold on to. They don't always work the way we want them to. So that's also something which is uncomfortable for us. So the word, the topsy-turvy view, if you like, is that we find things which are actually unpleasant as being pleasant, and the counter to that, what the Buddha said was that that there is suffering in our experience, and that's the things that I mentioned. And I think from my own example for myself is when I was working. I retired about 4 years ago, but when I worked, I was generally very stressed. And whenever I found myself in a place where, so I was at lunch and I was in a cafe, and I think to myself, I can't wait to retire so that I can do this sort of thing and just have, be perfectly relaxed all the time. And now I'm retired, I find that yes, I can sit in cafes. But there are still things. When I was looking forward to this thing, I excluded all the other stresses, all the other things which I have to do. I must say I'm much happier now than when I was working, but nevertheless I had a lopsided view of what it would be like. I focused only on what I would see as the pleasant aspects. So that's the first view, the seeing the unpleasant as pleasant. The second one is seeing impermanent, the impermanent things as permanent. So we all sort of know, don't we, that there's nothing in existence which is permanent. We rationally we understand that, but we tend to act in a different way. So I know that that when I buy a new phone, it's fantastic. It's got all the sort of colours and memory and everything else that I want. But I know that in 2 years' time, the battery's going to fail and I'm going to have to get another one. But nevertheless, I have in my mind this thing's permanent, if you like, permanent for 2 years. I've got this 2 years for it. But the day after I get it, I drop it and break it, or it gets stolen or something. Or they release a better version, and then all of a sudden, all this sort of temporary permanence that I hold in my mind is lost. And that's unsettling and uncomfortable. And it has a strong connection. This fact that our experiences, our existence is impermanent, has a strong connection to the first teaching about suffering. And the impermanence of reality it does cause us suffering. We lose our possessions, we lose our relationships. The status we had is now gone. Things like this are uncomfortable for us. So impermanence has that sort of effect. But it can have quite profound effects when we think about the realization of the Buddha of aging, sickness, and death. When people close to us die, when we think about our own death, these are difficult things to hold on to, but things nevertheless which that are realities of our existence, in our existence. And this impermanence also has a relationship to the next upside down view, which is we see the things which are insubstantial as substantial. So we see things as fixed and real, and the thing that we grasp after most in that respect is ourselves. This concept of ourselves as me and I. That's a very dear belief or view that we have. That we believe that that we're here and we're fixed. But Buddhism says that's not in fact true. I mean, it doesn't deny that we have consciousness and that we have this belief that there is a me in this consciousness. But it says that our consciousness is in fact, it's a moving thing, it's a fluid thing, and it's affected by conditions like everything else. And that, in the book here, Sangharakshita describes us, our sense of ourselves, as being a psychophysical stream of consciousness, which proceeds through the day, through the years, and actually in Buddhism terms, through lifetimes. And it's changing. It's like everything else. It's not static. It's changing all the time. It's not a fixed thing which doesn't change. And in fact, this non-fixedness of ourselves is actually a positive thing when you think about it, because it allows us to change. And when we're talking about the conditionality of karma, when we know that we act out of positive motivations, then we're changing ourselves and others for the better, or we're impacting other people positively for the better. So, and that's because there is this sort of dynamic flow that we're a part of. And these three things, so we've got these three views, these three upside down views of seeing the pleasant as unpleasant as pleasant, seeing the permanent as impermanent as permanent, and seeing the insubstantial as substantial. These three things have their counterparts in Buddhism, and they are that there is suffering in the world, that everything is impermanent, and that there is no fixed self. And those three things are known as the three marks of existence, if you like, the realities of our existence. And the Buddha's teaching of those three marks of existence, or the counterpoint, pointing out the opposite, the topsy-turvy views, which are the counter to those, is in order to balance our view of life, to correct our view. It's not to make us think, that everything's bad and that everything's going to disappear and that we don't exist. It's more to see that our existence as being fluid and dynamic, and something which we can change and something we can move ahead with. And he points out that quite often people point to the suffering aspects of Buddhism as being pessimistic. But he's saying that it's not. Buddhism is not pessimistic and it's not optimistic. The word he uses in the book is melioristic, which means that it attempts to find a better way. It's a better way to improve our situation, and it does that by seeing reality for what it is, so seeing the nature of existence as it in fact is, and that's difficult. With these views that we're talking about are deeply ingrained. Whilst rationally we might not, we might agree that the truth of the teachings, we act in a different way, and in fact we need to meditate quite regularly, on the truths, and to learn, as we're starting here, about the truths in order to take them on board. But this meditation itself has to be supported by, in order to meditate successfully, it has to be supported by a sort of an ethical lifestyle, which helps us meditate, helps us take in the reality of the world, and helps develop wisdom as to the true nature of existence. So I'm going to finish with a couple of brief quotes, if I can remember where I put them. No, I won't actually. I'll just with one. And it's about how we should see the conditioned or the phenomena that we see around us. It's basically the way we see the world. And it says we should see them as stars, a fault of vision, as a lamp, a mock show, dewdrops or a bubble, a dream, a lightning flash, or as a cloud. So should one view what is conditioned. In other words, temporary, and ephemeral, and that we're part of a flow of events, ourselves and everything else. And that's all I have to say on that for now. Let's talk to Amarapuspa in a second, but that's that for now.
Thanks, Amaladana, for introducing these very profound teachings of the upside down views. I just always love that word, viparyasana, this whole thing about topsy-turvy, and I find that whole has quite a movement to it, that just the sense that the way I ordinarily go about the world is it's kind of an upside down view, and that I think I'm an eternal optimist, more like if things are going well, I block out what's not positive about it, and I just assume it's not going to change because it's the way I want it to be.
Yeah, and when things are going the way you want them to, you don't look to modify anything, do you?
Yeah.
Whereas maybe when things aren't going so well, you might reflect on whether you're looking at things properly or not, and whether there are things you can do to make your life more happy.
Yeah. I think when things are going well, we get a bit more oblivious. Often it's when we're let down and caught short that I know a lot of people start thinking about a spiritual life, in fact, where, reality isn't measuring up to, the agenda for life, that I'm going to get this and that, and I'm going to live happily ever after.
And that's, it's just looking at the spiritual life as a sort of a possession, isn't it?
Yeah.
And sort of like ticking boxes and getting things.
Well, life in general, not just spiritual life. Is there? This is a description of a human situation, which is subject to this flow of conditions. But is there a place where isn't this flow of conditions, where things aren't impermanent and unsatisfactory, etc., etc.?
Well, I think the term that's used quite often is to escape the conditioned.
Yeah.
You need to go to the unconditioned.
Exactly. Yeah.
But ultimately, when you try to describe the unconditioned, well, you can't actually.
You can't, but it quite relates to me that there can be something really sad. I guess the Buddha would say the only thing that's really satisfactory is insight, enlightenment, and then you break through the delusion of catching on, trying to catch on to these conditions and hold things that are in constant flow.
And that's it's funny, isn't it? Because when I was reading about this, I think. I sort of understand what it's saying, but I also don't understand what it's saying. Because we try to imagine this unconditioned, or this. I love the idea of this sort of psychophysical energy. I like the idea of energy. Yeah. And he also said that he describes all phenomena as like condensed energy. Mm-hmm. It takes a form for a period, then it moves on. Sometimes very rapidly. Yeah. And I like that sort of sense. But actually to live my life, my day-to-day life, with that in mind is very difficult. And to imagine what it might be like to see the world exactly like that is almost impossible to imagine. I find it impossible to imagine.
Yeah, I guess we're quite conditioned to navigate the world in a certain way, and we need to get our bearings in conditioned reality. But often it's compared to, we lay out a map of what things are, but then we mistake the map for the actual landscape. So we pin things down and deaden things around us, and cause ourselves a lot of suffering by trying. In a way, it's kind of like trying to get blood out of a stone. It's like trying to get something that it's nothing personal. It's just that reality isn't like that.
I mean, I like this sort of contrast between the flow sort of idea and the fixed idea.
Yeah.
Because when we make these plans, like you say, we're sort of trying to make a plan with make a deal with reality.
Yeah.
These things. If I do these things, then these things will happen, and this will be my experience. but we just don't. We're just not that clever. We're not able to do that. We're just, we're just not able to fix things in that way, or to even anticipate how we will be, with how our mental state will respond to given situations.
Yes. Well, we're trying to control something that can't be controlled.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that's what I do. You know, that we're always looking for something that, and then we look at things around us. Some things don't seem to be changing at all. Like this floor seems relatively permanent to this candle. I know that we're going to blow out any minute, so it's it's more intangible. So then we take things that are seeming more stable, and we create something that feels very secure when we could have an earthquake any minute or something. I mean, Buddhism isn't pessimistic, because it sounds pretty dreary. But I think when we reflect on it and penetrate it, it brings up a lot more vitality and aliveness to that energy you're talking about. So it's not like we get into horrified anxiety. There could be an earthquake any minute, but we might enjoy the sense of connection. That's not all just objects out there and dead, and that we're all this flow of energy. We're not all fixed.
Yeah, and I think so it started, didn't I? So talking about the interconnectedness of things. The conditionality has this sort of knock-on, which can sound rather boring, but just think about it a little more. I mean, the fact that everything is connected is really marvelous, isn't it? I mean, it has a very it generates a very sort of loving sort of response.
Yeah.
For everything, not even immaterial, even material things, as opposed to living things.
Yeah.
Because what's immaterial today, materials today, can become living tomorrow. And we sort of know this, but we sort of live our lives as if we're not connected in that way.
Yeah, and I think when we take that in, it brings us to the love and compassion aspect of enlightenment, because impermanence is interconnectedness, really. Because everything's changing. So and ultimately that's love, because we're all connected.
Yeah, and that's so from a very simple statement, quite a lot comes out of that.
Yeah.
But I wonder why I wonder how do you think? What do you think about the views in terms of? So we know that these are things that were identified by the Buddha as being topsy-turvy views. I wonder if there are other things, or whether they just spurn everything else,
I'm sure there are other things. I'm sure there are other things. I mean, I think the Buddha just would, it's in general just different manifestations of conditionality, But I'm sure we could. Buddhism is famous for naming all these different things.
I did try not to come up with the Pali terms, and then but it's very difficult. Yeah, it's very difficult to talk about the Buddha's teaching without coming up with lists, isn't it?
Yeah. But I think that you could just take impermanence. All religions look at impermanence. It's a fact of life that everybody knows about. It's not we know, but we don't know. But Buddhism goes into it so profoundly and to such depth, and from that impermanence, you get the other two marks, which is unsatisfactoriness. That's why things can't never be satisfactory in conditioned existence. And then at the other end of the spectrum, that's why things are ultimately insubstantial. That's if you take impermanence to its furthest degree.
Yeah.
So I think in a way, we could just spend a lifetime reflecting on those three marks.
Yeah, and it sort of takes you into sort of strange places in your mind, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's very expansive thinking about those things. Almost literally, you sort of think about wider spaces and connections, and thinking about looking out at the universe, and then and in some way it's quite liberating, the idea that at least it bears some sort of more sense than me as a fixed person living in this gigantic universe and thinking that I'm the most important thing and the only thing that really matters.
Yeah.
And I know it's not true, but I can't help but let go of it. I can't let go of it. I can't let go of that idea.
Yeah.
But these teachings help move towards something else.
And reflecting on them in meditation, gives us more of an experience of it if we reflect on that. And I just want to say, the whole thing about ugliness and beauty has been very misinterpreted. So it's not like the Buddha is saying there isn't beauty in the world. It's just that we don't know what true beauty
It's
really
relative,
is.
isn't it?
It's relative, yeah. But some Buddhists have interpreted that they can't have anything beautiful, which isn't what the that's a misunderstanding.
Yeah, I mean, so I mean, looking at it from a very from a consumeristic sort of standpoint, we can experience it, can't we? Where if we overindulge in food or just treat ourselves with too much stuff, we could just sort of be literally sick, or a little bit, or feel ugly, feel ugly in our grasping after things. And we can do it at that sort of simple level, can't we? We can see it at that simple level, but
But I was just looking at the beauty of these flowers right now, and I just think there's definitely true beauty in this world, and just looking at them could take you to a place that's beyond this kind of fixed. You could really contemplate that beauty, and to me it's a doorway into something beyond this way we fix things.
And nature generally, isn't it? I mean, particularly right now we've got the summer's arrived, and everything is just burst out, hasn't it? In terms of the growth in plants and trees, and it's just really, really thriving. It's a sort of real sort of living world, and you can feel a part of that. And it's energy, isn't it? It's an energy that's involved with that.
Yeah.
And I love the expression of the phenomena as like condensed forms of energy, and that they can transmute to other things, and it's real, but we prefer, we live our lives preferring to see things as what they are. The floor will always be this floor, and of course we won't. Anyway.
Yeah. Yes, to be continued.
To be continued. Thank you.
Back to the floor again.
Great, so I hope you enjoyed that Dharma night talk. So if you did enjoy it, if you're enjoying our videos, I just want to ask you or encourage you to think about making a donation to the Brixton Buddhist community. We're a UK charity that relies completely on your donations to run everything here. And if this was a meditation class, there'd be a donation bowl that you could just put in £10 at the end of the night to help support the activities. But as you're watching this online, I just want to ask you to think about making an online donation. If you've watched 4 or 5 videos this month, maybe you might want to think about giving £10. So there's a link in the description below where you can go to our website and make a donation. And if you want to keep giving and you don't want to worry about making that donation every month, well, you could just set up a monthly standing order. That would be really, really helpful. I want to suggest something of the region of maybe £10 or £20 a month if you're able to do that. And that would be really, really helpful and help us keep producing videos like this one. Thanks for listening. Take care of yourself.